Welcome back, everybody, to another session of Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log. This is going to be my fifth mission. And as you may recall, in our last mission, we lost Lieutenant Commander Sarah Paulson to, I guess you could say, some eco-terrorists and their shuttle-bound bomb. Definitely a dramatic conclusion. If you missed any of Sarah Paulson's stories, feel free to go back and take a look. From today onwards, and hopefully for a little longer than 4 missions, we'll be using a new character I rolled up, Captain Sam Bronson of the... I didn't put his assignment in there. Of the NX-03 Challenger. Yes, we are moving backward in time to the year 2155, shortly after the events of Demons and Terra Prime, the real finale of Star Trek Enterprise. And I have decided to run based on an NX-class ship, which all of you should be familiar with. If you've not watched Enterprise, you are missing out. It is the show that got me into Star Trek to the level I currently am. So yeah, we'll be flying on the NX-03 Challenger, which in canon we don't know a huge amount about the NX-03. We know that the writers had intended to go in the space shuttle progression for the naming conventions. That's why we got Enterprise, which was the first space shuttle, test space shuttle, didn't go to space, but was valuable in testing efforts. And then Columbia was the second. Challenger was the third. And I believe Endeavour was the fourth, Atlantis the fifth, something like that. And then Discovery is in there somewhere as well. So anyways, I decided to put this mission, this campaign, set shortly after the events of Terra Prime, so we can deal with some of that, the increased tensions following that period, but also so we can kind of butt up against the beginnings of the Romulan War, which again, we don't know a huge amount about. We know roughly when it begins and when it ends. It begins sometime in 2156, and it ends in 2160. The Federation is then founded shortly after that. So, Captain Sam Bronson, I'll tell you a little bit about him, and then we're going to go ahead and just dive right into the Captain's Log for this week. He was born in 2117 in the Bay Area. Graduated from Berkeley with both a bachelor's and a master's degree. Master's degree in 2141. He joined Starfleet about the same time Starfleet was founded. One of the younger people to join. And served under Captain Gardner on the SS Emmett, which I believe was one of the Warp Delta ships in the fleet. After serving when Gardner was promoted to Admiral in 2154, Bronson was promoted to Commander and was transferred to the NX-02 Columbia, where he served as First Officer. Since then, the Challenger basically was completed around the same time, at least in my canon. Again, we have no information on this, but the Challenger was completed in 2155, shortly after the events of Terra Prime. So I've said it's been about a month, but we'll get into that as soon as I start the Starlog. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Captain Starlog, February 23rd, 2155. The first month aboard the Challenger has been incredibly slow. The way Jonathan and Erika described it, I expected to be in a firefight by the time we reached Pluto. Being the first NX-class captain to have previously served on an NX-class ship does have some advantages. For one thing, it didn't take me more than a day or two to get accustomed to the Challenger's peculiarities. Every ship hums just a little bit differently. I suppose that has about as much to do with her chief engineer as it does to do with the ship herself. I remember after Commander Tucker came aboard to resolve Columbia's engine problems, the sound she made shifted ever so slightly. I digress. This is my first log entry that doesn't simply say, "We're en route and all is well, so I'd better get started." The Challenger is in orbit of Taugus III. We've been surveying the system for possible colonization, and unfortunately, I can't recommend it. There appear to be creatures not unlike dinosaurs of old Earth. Lieutenant Matthews has requested an away mission to study some of the creatures up close, and I have to say, the prospect excited me nearly as much as it did him. I'll be flying the shuttle down myself, with Will and a handful of Makos down in an hour. And excuse me, I'm going to be retconning that already. I wrote this a couple days ago. He will not be flying the shuttle down himself because his piloting skills are practically non-existent. So we'll retcon that and say Ensign Monroe will be piloting the shuttle down with myself, Will, and a handful of Makos. Fantastic. So there we are. We know what our first stuff is going to be. We're heading down to Taugus III. So let's go ahead and do a bit of cinematic painting. As the Starlog concludes, we cut to, throughout that whole narration, we would have seen some beauty shots of the Challenger, would have cut to an overhead view of Taugus III. Probably looks maybe about 50 to 60% water, and the rest of the planet is covered in absolutely verdant green land masses. It's evident that the the planet currently is in an oxygen-rich stage, or no, that'd be carbon dioxide-rich, wouldn't it? Yeah, carbon dioxide-rich plants have grown to a much heartier state than they currently are on Earth. Would likely match with, again, that kind of Cretaceous, Triassic, whatever periods of Earth history. So we've seen the shots of the ship, of the planet. We'll cut to as Captain Bronson is kind of walking from his ready room to the shuttle bay. And he's joined by, we'll say, Lieutenant Matthews, who seems to be of Native American descent. Younger man in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. Has a big smile on his face, seems to be just very gung-ho about the prospect of kind of encountering basically dinosaurs. We then would see as the turbolift stops midway down from the bridge, and they're having a conversation as all this is going on. I don't think the conversation is necessarily relevant to paint a picture of, but they're just chatting about, what can we expect? Have you ever been? How many worlds have you been on? Things of that nature. They're joined by a young woman shortly thereafter, likely no older than about 22 or 23. Red hair, fair complexion, likely, and it would be obvious around the time that she first speaks, of Irish descent, roughly. And I say roughly because if I attempt to do an accent later, it will likely not be Irish, but some mixture of Irish and Scottish, because I'm terrible at accents. The three of them exit the turbolifts and walk the handful of steps forward to the shuttle bay, and are greeted by a woman in her late 30s who is wearing a Mako uniform. And while rank insignia is a little bit harder to tell on Mako uniforms than it is on Starfleet uniforms, she is introduced as Major Lambert. So we have Captain Bronson, we have Lieutenant Matthews, we have Ensign Monroe, and Major Lambert. Awesome. And kind of to the side of Major Lambert are 5 other Makos. So it's going to be a crowded shuttle on the way down. We see them all kind of cram into Shuttle Pod 1, and after a brief time, it's getting clearances from the bridge, Ensign Monroe takes the ship out of the shuttle bay and flies down to the planet, setting the shuttlecraft down in a clearing that's about 1 kilometer away from what looks to be a watering hole of sorts. The Makos are all carrying their, I guess you'd call them phase rifles. I don't remember. Maybe they're pulsed phase rifles, something along those lines. And Our, what is it, 3 Starfleet officers are all carrying phase pistols. So they begin to set off. We see them kind of trekking through the lush terrain. It's almost like a jungle, but I don't think it's quite that humid. The foliage is just dense and generally bigger than what we see on Earth. After a short time, they approach a watering hole, and we would see our first glimpses of some alien dinosaurs. For the most part, they look to be herbivores. But shortly thereafter, I think we'll get to our first task. Let's go ahead and do a science task as they begin to kind of catalog these various alien dinosaurs. So Sam Bronson was in fact he has a scientific background. His master's degree is in physics in general. He focused on astrophysics and geophysics. So he's going to go ahead and do a reason science, which would be a 15. We're going to be rolling our 2d20, and I will be using science blue for the most part with him, as long as the dice don't betray me. And we do, in fact, have 2 successes. Yes, 2 successes. That's a 10 and a 1. None of his focuses come into play. We are generating a momentum, which again, I'll be using my Viking coin for that. So we have our first success. Excellent. Let's go ahead and mark that down here. And I should say this is this mission is called The Curse of God, which you will see what that implies later, I presume, unless things absolutely take a left turn. Okay, so we have done our first task. They're working on their scientific survey, taking some scans with their tricorders, and generally cataloging the wide array of species. And we'll say there are currently 18 different species at the watering hole. Some kind of hanging about the trees above, some in the water, some drinking around the edge of the watering hole, etc. And it's at this point that the captain's communicator will chirp. And he kind of flips it open and says, "This is Bronson." And a voice from the ship comes back saying, let me look at my sheet here, communications. "Captain, this is Lieutenant Commander Tassal," clearly a Vulcan name. And the camera will cut to a Vulcan on the bridge. Probably evident that it's a younger woman as far as Vulcans are concerned. Clearly no older than about 70 or 80 Vulcan years. Probably an actor in her 30s as far as humans are concerned. And she will say, "Sir, we have detected a probe dropping out of high warp, entering the system. It seems to be on a direct course for us." Bronson would reply, "Well, Commander, keep scans on it. Make sure it's not going to damage our ship in any way before we can get back. We'll take a few more scans and then head back up if you think it's necessary." "Yes, sir, I believe that would be warranted." And, 5-10 more minutes go by, and his communicator chirps again. "Sir, the probe is hailing us. It's sending a code that we have yet to analyze, but it seems to be of some urgent nature. There was, and it's important to note that the breaks in my speaking are not reflected in Lieutenant Commander Tassal. She is not quite so. She knows what she's trying to say. I'm trying to figure out what she's saying as I'm saying it. Important note, and that goes for most of them. Just a useful thing that I wanted to bring up. It seems that there's some amount of urgency. There's a tag at the beginning of the code that seems to be unencrypted in a language that is not in the Universal Translator. However, early signs show that it was written with some distress. Alright, we'll head right back up as soon as we can get back to the shuttle. No more than 20 minutes. Bronson out. Alright, people. I think it's time we head back to the ship. It seems our vacation is on hold. And at this point, I think we cut to a camera shot showing the landing party through the foliage. And the foliage begins to rustle. And maybe, I don't know who's doing the music for this show, but if we assume it's like Dennis McCarthy or something, maybe he does a loose play on the Jurassic Park theme, one of the pieces from Jurassic Park. And all of a sudden we see a creature burst from the trees. And I think we're going to go ahead and do a brief combat. Just for fun. Let me grab a pad of paper. There's one. Okay. So this creature has the initiative, so we're going to take 1 wound to start off with. And we'll call this Bronson. And we'll call the other one Dino, because that seems fitting. So Bronson has taken 1 wound. It's now his action. We're going to switch, however, to the red dice. And let's see, control security, he's not bad. That's a 12. Let's go ahead and roll for it. He has no focuses that will help him. And I don't think let's see. Yeah, no. I don't think using the crew is going to help here either. So let's go ahead and roll for it. That is 2 successes. Excellent. We don't need to worry about... I think I can spend momentum actually to do something useful here. Let me take a quick look at page 275. I could have spent it to avoid that first. Oh, those are random momentum spends. That's right. That's right. So let's go back to the page there. Personal conflicts, I think. Remove 1 hit. Yeah, let's go ahead, because we are generating a momentum. Actually, yeah, we'll just spend... We got an extra success. I think we can spend that right away to remove the hit on us. So I'll go ahead and X that out. And we're going to go ahead and take another shot. And this is essentially using Bronson as the scapegoat for how well the crew is... at tackling this dinosaur. And this thing, we'll say it's got like 4 arms. They're certainly longer than a T-Rex. It's got 2 back legs, and then 2 of the arms, when it needs speed, it seems to run on as well. But then as it gets closer, it starts to swipe with all 4 of its arms. Kind of a long jaw, closer to a crocodile, very sharp teeth. Probably stands about 10 meters tall. So no easy customer to face. So we're going to go ahead and roll our second attack. The first volley of phaser fire strikes the target true. It stumbles back a little bit, but it does not seem to have taken much of an effect. All right, that is 1 success. On the second attack, we got a 4 and a 16. Second round of fire, we see the Makos begin to spread out and begin to flank. They dial in some adjustments on their phase rifles, and you see the shots begin to have much larger impact. And essentially 9 members of the away team are firing almost nonstop, and this creature is getting dangerously close. So let's see if they can get out of it. That is a 2 and a 13, so once again, 1 more success. And for the sake of it, yeah, I'm going to add 2 more. I think it's fair to make a dino have 2, whatever these are called, hit points, 2 extra hit points. So let's go ahead and roll the 4th. That is a failure. We're going to go ahead and spend our momentum from that first task and re-roll 1 of these. It's a 13 and a 16. And again, we are looking at a 12 for control security. That is a 1. Excellent. So that is 1 success. At this point, we see the dino we'll call it an exodino, beginning to collapse onto its middle hands, I guess. Kind of a weird term for it. But shortly thereafter, third volley, and again, one success. Got some lucky die rolls in there. And with that, the dino collapses to the ground, and we see it still breathing, but is clearly not going anywhere for a while. So, the landing party had Bronson's urgent, kind of urgent warning. Says, let's get out of here, post haste. Best speed back to the shuttle. And with that, they hustle off through the undergrowth, past the watering pool that now suddenly has no creatures in sight, and back to the shuttlecraft. There are no navigational challenges here on Taugus III, but as the shuttle arrives back at the ship, we do see a shot of, once again, the Challenger in orbit, and there's a probe sitting, in Star Trek terms, it looks like it's sitting just 100 feet off the bow, but in reality, I think it'd be several kilometers away. The magic of digital trickery. So the shuttle docks in the shuttle bay, and Bronson is the first out, and he hustles with Lieutenant Matthews back to the bridge. Matthews is a little pale after the encounter with the dinos, but seems to be pleased enough with his own personal performance with the phased pistol. As Bronson enters the bridge, he calls report. And we see sitting in the currently in the captain's chair, there's another woman, probably in her mid-30s, just a few years younger than Captain Bronson. She's got kind of high cheekbones, again, fair complexion, kind of auburn hair of sorts. And as soon as the captain steps onto the bridge, she vacates the captain's chair and cycles back around to tactical, where she relieves a crewman. She says, give me a second. I'm going to try and get this accent right before I speak. All right, I'm not going to embarrass myself this time. She speaks with a definite Australian or New Zealand accent, where she says, Captain, the probe, we've had a little bit of success decrypting the algorithms used, but we could certainly use another look. All right, and he walks over to the science station, where he pulls up, kind of stands next to Lieutenant Matthews, and pulls up the what we see is a waveform pattern on the screen, and has Lieutenant Matthews play it, and it's basically unintelligible gobbledygook. But let's go ahead and do a reason science task again. It's another 15. That is a 9 and a 10, 2 successes. We got our momentum back. He, after 4 or 5 minutes, kind of points out a couple of things he notices in the waveform, particular peculiarities in the amplitude. The amplitude is shifting at points where one wouldn't normally expect it from some kind of communication, and the period is also oscillating. So after kind of identifying those couple of key pieces, the communications officer, Lieutenant Commander Tassal, she quickly patches in some adjustments to the communication algorithms, which it's useful to note. It's clear that she's not as comfortable with United Earth systems. A lot of the struggle that we see her go through is unfamiliarity with the control systems. And with the database, the communications linguistics database, and it's evident that she is a newcomer to United Earth ships, Starfleet ships. But after a couple of minutes, we hear a distress call coming through the communications array. And I should mark that as the third success. And in brief, we'll say they're not able to pick up every word, so I don't have to... I'm not held accountable for cutting this short, but they are getting a call from a colony located in the Iota Leonis system. The call is incredibly vague. They say that they are in dire need of assistance, and that if someone does not come to help them as soon as possible, there's every chance that they will all die. At this point, of course, we get a lovely shot of Captain Bronson standing there, maybe runs his hands through his hair, scratches his chin, like, we're really supposed to be hanging out in the Taugus system, but even with a vague distress call, we're obligated to go and assist. Ensign Monroe, plot a course. And I think we would again see Lieutenant Commander Tassal, like, it looks like she wants to say something, but holds off. And shortly thereafter, the NX-03 Challenger jumps to warp. I did include the improved warp drive talent. I believe by the end of Enterprise, the Enterprise itself was able to go warp 5 for a reasonably good amount of time. Could hit warp 5.2 as needed for short bursts. So we'll say that the Challenger has the same upgrades installed, and that's basically what the improved warp drive entails. So they can cruise at about warp 4.9 to warp 5. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up once again, my warp calculator. I had a Python version too at one point that seems to have broken, so I'll have to fix that later. There's that, I think. There we go. All right. So let's go ahead and find the travel time. Distance in light years. It's about 5 light years, I said. I believe it's 4.8. And in fact, in taking a look at the Star Trek Star Charts book, you can see the systems that I'm referencing on page, for those of you who have this, which I'd be a little surprised if a ton of you did. On page 66, the Taugen sector. It's in the bottom left quadrant. Let's see, I'm not very good at doing these sorts of things upside down, but you could possibly see Taugus and, what did I say? Iota Leonis in this sector. So about 4.8 light years, at least according to ruler measurements. And we'll say that they can sustain a warp cruising factor of warp 4.9. We'll just call it warp 5. I think the improved warp drive, that's reasonable. Spatial factors, I don't think there was anything funky about that sector. Certainly possible. They're relatively close to what will become the Romulan neutral zone. But, no, it looks like the space in between those is relatively clear. So we'll say it's a little bit faster than normal, but not by much. 1.1. Okay, so it's going to take them about a week. Excellent. A little over a week. 7.5 days. Computer in program. All right, so they are at warp. Let's see, what is a good next task? You know what? Let's see if Ensign Monroe can shave a little bit of time off of that. I think this would be a good opportunity to do... yeah, we'll do a presence command test and have Captain Bronson go up to Ensign Monroe as she's manning the helm. I almost said helming the man, which is definitely not the right way to say that. And try to encourage her and see if she can get a little more out of the engines. and maybe he puts in a call to engineering to Lieutenant Commander Elias Berglund, who is our chief engineer. So yeah, presence command, difficulty, we're looking target number of 1, target number of 16, 1 success needed only. That's a 10, so that will succeed. And we'll see if they're able to get a little more juice out of it. So let me open up that warp calculator again. Shouldn't have closed it. Why are you doing that now? Ooh, there we go. There we go. Okay. Travel time, 4.8 light years. We'll say they're able to go 5.2. It's not going to make a huge difference, but yeah, about a day, actually. So that difference of warp factor 5.2 versus warp factor 5 makes about a 22-hour difference. Excellent. I don't know how much that's going to do for them as they arrive, but maybe that'll come into play. And as we approach, we would see maybe the captain return to his quarters. Actually, no, he'll go back to his ready room, and we'll see he ends up having a couple of conversations, maybe a conversation with Commander Tassal, who requests an audience or requests to speak with him. And this is really the first good look we're getting at his ready room. The first thing that we see, he's got a photograph, looks like an old photograph too, like mid 20th century of the Golden Gate Bridge. He's also got a sealed baseball card of a player that none of the audience will recognize. But the player's last name says Bronson, wearing San Francisco Giants uniform. And we'd see a baseball sitting on the shelf along with a glove. And in the corner, there's leaning a polyduranide baseball bat. And Lieutenant Commander Tassal comes in. Actually, we should probably be calling her Sub-Commander. I don't remember Vulcan ranks well enough, but we'll call her Sub-Commander Tassal. She is, as T'Pol was in Enterprise, being seconded, however you pronounce that, to Starfleet to serve on this NX-class ship. And I think their conversation would be relatively brief. She would express her concerns about jumping. She's read the reports from the Enterprise, as everybody has, and is concerned about humanity's desire to jump into every situation feet first. Head first. Feet first? Head first. Head first. And, you know, maybe that's on that first day, but we'd cut to, after that scene, cut to the Challenger dropping out of warp in the Iota Leonis system. And right away we can see that this is a hotter burning star than the sun. Looks like an F6V main sequence star. Burns about 8 to 10,000 Kelvin, I want to say. Let me take a look. What page was that? I should have bookmarked it earlier. I'm taking a look at textbook from college with, could have Googled this just as fast, I think. I'm looking at the HR diagrams, Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams. The main sequence, F5V, we're looking at, that's not the right chart. That's stellar spectra. There we go. About 7,000 Kelvin apparent temperature. I was estimating a little high. But on the screen, we'd see a graphical display of the star system. It seems to have 8 planets. The second, third, and fourth all seem like they could be habitable. The second one is very clearly desertified. Very kind of beige, sandy, no signs of water. Thin atmosphere, seems to be relatively large, but they're not detecting nowhere near enough oxygen in the atmosphere. Pressure's fine, they would just need need oxygen masks while they're down there. The third planet is of marginal habitability. It's a class L, so certainly could be terraformed, at least more easily than something like Mars can. And the fourth planet in the system is class M, and currently shows as having a very small population, in fact. There's a population of about 3,000 people, and they all seem to be... actually, that's an interesting question. I didn't come up with this ahead of time as far as who these people are, but what do we say that they could be human or they could be something else? That would be certainly interesting. I don't really care. I have no idea. I don't think the story demands one way or the other, so let's just roll the 50-50. Yes, they are human. No, they are not. So 1 to 10, 11 to 20. A colony of humans that seems to have not been recorded. There was no library logging as far as, at least not surface level, as to any population in this system. And you know what? I think this is a good time for a little bit of our fifth task. Let's go ahead and see if they can dig through the records. And this isn't so much a reason task as it is a persistence thing. So let's say... Go with insights. Let's go with insight science. Or... yeah, I think insight science makes the most sense. And this is essentially Bronson and the crew trying to dig through library records, records of colony ships that could have made it out this far in the amount of time since they launched, things of that nature. So we're going to go ahead and roll. We've got a 13 target number, just need one success. That is a success. A 6, that will be a success. And we would see that the colony ship left Earth, once again, going to pull up, because I like to be relatively factual, going to pull up the, I'm going to do the math off screen, and I'll be right back. All right, this colony is only about 35 light years away from Earth. So even at warp 2, it would take, which I think is about fair for a ship of this era, it would take about 3.5 years to get there. And with a population of 3,000, no ships could have had that scale of ship. No colony ships can hold 3,000 people. They tended to go with in the high hundreds to maybe 1,000. So we'll say it's been 30, 35 years since they arrived. I think that's fair. Yeah, so we'll go with that. This colony has been on Iota Leonis for about 35 years. And what's interesting, they note in the record that the population itself, who had been on this colony ship, had registered themselves as... how do I pronounce my own word? Imopamians. Which seems to be some kind of religion that they follow. And I think we'd see, again, Subcommander Tassal raise an eyebrow at this, and that would be the conclusion to our first act. So we're going to go ahead and stop this act here, and we will resume in Act 2 a little bit later. Couple of quick notes before I log off for the day. I want to thank you all for the support that I continue to get. As of the time I'm recording this, we're just about 10 or so subscribers away from 100. If I hit 100 subscribers by next week, I'll go ahead and wear a uniform jacket. I've got a knockoff Starfleet NX Project jacket that's incredibly warm, so I'll be miserable while I'm recording. But I will do that if we hit 100 subscribers by the next session. Which for me will be in about a week's time, so there's plenty of time to get that done. Secondly, if you enjoyed this session, I encourage you to leave a like. Go ahead and add a comment as well. I'd love to hear how you might have played things differently, what your thoughts are on the crew of the NX-03 Challenger, and where you think things might be going. Part 2 should be up on Saturday with Part 3 on Sunday. I like that routine that I've fallen into, so we'll stick with that for now. In the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed, and until next time, live long and prosper.